Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about mastering equity negotiations. So, picture the scene. You've just received an offer from a highly regarded startup. You've done your research into the company and you've nailed the interview process. It's almost time to take your seat on the rocket ship. However, there's one important consideration which comes before putting pen to paper. Whilst working for a startup can be financially rewarding, negotiating equity requires careful consideration. In this video, I'll provide some key insights into navigating this process successfully. The one rule to remember here is that there's always room to negotiate. Be aware that this isn't a typical salary negotiation. It is near impossible to negotiate your way to market rates. Early stage startups especially don't have the finances for it and will probably instead offer you equity. Before you even get to that stage, there are a number of key considerations to reflect upon. So number one is don't give a number too soon. If you haven't yet gone through the interview process, a particularly good piece of advice would be to not give the number too early. You neither want to lock yourself into too low a salary nor pitch so high that it turns the company off. This is a time to practice your deflection skills. Consider saying something like, I'm looking for a salary in line with my experiences and the value I would bring to your team. If they press you for a number, give a range. A range shows that you're amenable to the company's needs and that you've done your research. That takes me to the next point. Conduct market research. First things first, carry out personal research. Talk with mentors, friends, or anyone who should be aware of your compensation. How low is too low? Working out your bottom line before entering the negotiation gives you an anchor and prevents you from getting desperate. Additionally, find out what related positions at similar startups pay. So this gives you a benchmark that is actually quite accurate. Comparing this particular startup job to one at a large company just doesn't work. When considering your salary, look into the startup's financial status. Very, very important point. So, did they just receive funding, for example? What does their future look like? Your salary won't mean anything if the company goes belly up in a few months' time. We recommend using Crunchbase as a great tool for finding data on a company's financing and valuation, which will better inform the viability of your offer. Also, note that a company that just received funding has more cash lying around, which may be reflected in your salary. Conversely, a startup whose funding is drying up and is likely to be entering another funding round soon will probably have less cash on hand to pay new hires. After all of that research has been done, come up with a pay range. First, start with your midpoint, or the salary you'd expect to see if the employer thinks you're fully capable of performing all parts of the job. Your range should be between 75% and 125% of that, i.e. 25% on each end for the midpoint. For example, say you're an experienced CFO whose midpoint is 160,000, you'd probably expect a salary range of between 145k and 175k. If the company has a bright future ahead, it may be worth accepting a lower salary for more equity, which leads to the next point. Remember the equity. Your offer will almost certainly come with equity. If not, it's worth asking when this does become an option for you. There's no need to accept below market rates and longer hours without any potential upside. In theory, you're working in a startup because you believe in it, so you want to be well positioned to reap the benefits of its success. Let's now look at the most common forms of equity. So RSUs, restricted stock units, these are the least risky to you as an individual, as the company promises to give you shares when the IPO or go public. This helps you to avoid paying taxes on your stake now. Note that this does come with some restrictions, whether it be when, to whom, or how you sell this stock. Traditional stock options such as ISOs, NSOs, in that situation, the startup gives you the option to buy shares at a discounted price. So while you're still paying for your stock, this deal assumes that the share price will increase as the company becomes more valuable and you'll therefore make a return on your stock. These are less stable than RSUs, but if handled correctly, they have significant tax advantages and are the more popular option. Remember that startups answer to shareholders of all kinds, including founders, investors, board members, you and the employee, of course. Excuse me. Unless you're a founder or early investor, your equity will be likely to be a very small percentage, typically between 0.2 and 0.4%, unless you're a really early hire. but that can be a large number when sold if the company takes off. Note that if you're being issued shares, you'll want to ask for the number of outstanding shares to understand what your percentage of the company will be. In addition, going back to your Crunchbase research, older companies with more investment rounds will be offering you more diluted equity. Why is that? Basically because so much equity has already been given away. Besides uncovering the equity percentage you're being offered, try and work out when the company, what the company would be worth if it succeeded. Are there some comparable companies out there in a similar niche? If so, how big is the market share? Will this startup be the first to market perhaps? One of the reasons startups can get away with cutting 20, 30 or even 40% off market pay rates is because of the upside offered by a vesting package. So make sure the equity you're being given is fair. Just a quick word on vesting. So when people refer to vesting schedules, they're referring to a period over which you're granted your equity. If a startup were to give you that 0.2% stake outright, what's to stop you from quitting the next day? This keeps incentives aligned. The most common way of distributing equity to an employee is to vest monthly over 4 years. In other words, for each month you're at the startup, you receive 1/48 of your equity. A term often paired with vesting is the cliff period. It's not uncommon for a startup to put a 1-year cliff period in place. This simply means that you as the employee won't start receiving equity until the end of this 1-year cliff period. This gives an employer a chance to evaluate you as an employee before giving away equity. So it's kind of a protective measure. Picking one or the other, should it be salary, should it be equity? You can't have your cake and eat it, of course. So when it becomes time to negotiate, pitch which aspect of your offer you want to work on. Think about your own personal needs. If you're more risk averse, consider negotiating the salary in exchange for less equity. Come prepared with data and back up your counteroffer with evidence. If you genuinely believe in the company and you think it will succeed, go for equity. Again, data is crucial to back up your claims. When it comes down to deciding what to negotiate, it's also essential to look at where the company is. There are 3 possible scenarios here. If this is an early stage startup, you don't want to value your equity as money you have now. The unfortunate reality is that almost all startups fail, and even the best VCs are right only about 20% of the time. This means your equity is more likely to be worthless, and you should plan to live entirely on your base salary. Another scenario would be if the startup is fast growing, successful, and not yet public, it's safer to assume your equity will at some point be worth something. Although nothing is guaranteed, this is a scenario where negotiating for more equity could make sense. Keep in mind that it will be many years before you can cash in. Lastly, if the company is post-IPO, equity is very volatile, but it is as good as money. In this case, it really is up to your personal preference. Equity still carries a degree of risk, i.e., will this dramatically increase over the years or will it decrease? No matter what elements you choose to negotiate, make it all about business and the value you add to the team. What are your past experiences? What skills make you the best candidate for the job? Remember, negotiations are about convincing the other party of your value. Although it may seem impossible, negotiating your startup offer is absolutely doable. Armed with this information, I hope it helps you to go out there and get yourself a better offer. If you're curious to hear more about how we've helped hundreds and thousands of candidates over the years optimize their joining package, please do get in touch with me. Remember to like the video, hit that subscribe button so we can continue doing our work and spreading that far and wide. And until the next video, take good care of yourself. All the best.